Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Coffee. Without it, we would never have had the Industrial Revolution. We'd all be still living in Europe in mud huts. Here in Laredo, we have the Organic Man Coffee Trike. 4501 McPherson, the best coffee on the planet. If you can't get to Laredo, you can order from the Organic Man Coffee Trike.shop. Welcome to Story Time with Chris James. And I will now pick up exactly where I left off last time. The BAG Company Goes Squatching. Chapter 3 Foul Deeds. The appointment had set up last week. Pam had nearly forgotten. No, she had forgotten. Only because there was a note taped to her office desk lamp did Pam remember to head over to this house call. Mr. Guy Galumpus, Pam Bogus, you said you thought your house was haunted, so I came to have a look. Guy Galumpus was a medium-sized man. He'd called asking for someone to come by his house and see if there were ghosts running about disturbing his sleep. The last call like this Pam had been on, it turned out that the house owner was the ghost. What can you tell me about your experiences? Pam had her notebook out, ready to track his difficulties. Guy told Pam his story. It happens when I'm trying to sleep. They run up and down the hallway, making all kinds of noise. It's getting so I can't get any rest. Has anyone else seen or heard anything? Pam asked. No, just me. I'm getting kind of tired of it, literally. Pam listed all of his complaints, and then she set about finding the cause of his problems. Pam had brought all the ghost hunting gear she thought she might need, cameras and recorders and meters and things, but first she thought she'd just have a walkthrough. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to me? She thought about what Sharma had said about ghost hunters. Pam didn't bother with EVPs because ghosts would just speak to her without any need for electronic gadgets. She walked around the whole house looking for anyone there other than Mr. Galumpus. After several minutes of not finding anyone, Pam went to inquire more details from Guy. I'm not seeing or hearing anyone. Is there something you do each day before they show up? No, I just go to bed and there they are. You only see them in your sleep? Yes, and they make sleeping impossible. The guy gave her a look that said he was telling the truth. So you're asleep and they keep you awake. Pam didn't bother writing any of this down. Yes, every night when I'm trying to sleep. Mr. Galumpus had taken a few days off to meet with Pam. Pam had an idea. I need for you to go to bed and sleep. What, right now? You ever try to force yourself to go to sleep? Here, read this. It'll put you under real quick. She handed him a copy of War and Peace. 1,300 pages of mostly peace with a few blood-soaked wars thrown in to flesh out the story. And now, with Guy in his bed trying to go to sleep so the ghosts would come to bother him, Pam was resigned to wait. She wished she had brought another book along to keep herself occupied while she waited, but she hadn't planned on having to sit around waiting on sleep-enticing spirits. Pam sent her mom a text telling her how much fun Pam was having. Then she remembered the cell tower was still down near their home. Her mother wouldn't get any texts until she drove out of their neighborhood. Something moved moved in the hallway. It sounded like claws on hardwood, clicking along the corridor. Pam looked up and down the hallway, but there was nothing there. "Hello? Is there someone there wishing to speak to me?" She heard the clicking sound. Something began to scratch at the baseboards. Pam looked all around, trying to track down the cause of the sound. The sound increased. It went from scratching on wood to what sounded like a stampede running about. Then Pam spotted the interlopers. There were dozens of them, all running about and causing an uproar. The average size was about a foot high, and they were covered with white feathers. She had found a flock of ghost chickens, poultrygeist. They clucked and squawked and generally made a cacophony of noise. Some busied themselves scratching at the woodwork, while others flapped their wings and bounced off the walls. Pam had no idea how to manage this fowl gathering. She didn't speak chicken. "Hey, knock it off," she yelled, not knowing what else to do. The chickens all stopped their dastardly deeds and turned to look at Pam. Their gaze was as cold as a crypt. Now that she had their undivided attention, Pam had no idea how to handle this situation. What do you want?" The chickens all began to make soft clucking and squawkings. They began to advance on Pam's position. Pam stepped back, not feeling very brave being face down with a bunch of escapees from the colonel. As if receiving orders from the air, the chickens all came running, storming at Pam as if intent on her demise. She took off running, trying to escape this feathered attack force. Her shoes pounded down the hallway and out the door. She would have closed the door, but the chickens were right on her heels. Down the sidewalk out into the street, the hens were gaining on Pam. She turned and began to run for the office, which was only 3 miles from where she was right now. In the cartoons, people are always slipping on banana peels, but that doesn't work in real life. However, there are things you will slip on, like doggy do. Her shoe had no lugs on them to give her traction in muddy, slippery cross-country runs. Well, of course not. She was wearing a pair of flats. The sole of her shoe splattered right down in the middle of what had to have been left behind by a Great Dane or two. Her foot skidded out from under her body. It all kind of happened in slow motion. First, the foot slid along and managed to get out front of Pam. Then her leg began to pull away from her, making her body slowly lower to the blacktop. Her seat took most of the shock as it made contact with the street surface. Pam was just happy the dog poo was not under her as she landed. She slid a few feet, her body joining her bottom on the street. The last thing to land was her head. She saw a few stars floating past her eyes. Then the chickens were upon her. The pack rushed her and took up a roost on every part of her body. One even stood on her forehead. They all began to preen. At about 6 pounds apiece, they had Pam secured to the ground. There must have been 50 of them, all standing on Pam. "Get off of me! You're squishing me! I can't breathe!" "If you can't breathe, you shouldn't be able to speak." "Oh, gee, thanks." The hen sitting on Pam's forehead looked down at her, and then it spoke. "We are the spirits of the unjustly assassinated defenders of the treasure of John the Foot." "You mean Jean Lafitte?" Pam had to ask. "Who?" "No, not him. John the Foot. He was a famous French hen who robbed from the rich and kept it all for himself." "But hens are all female." Pam was finding it hard to reason with a bunch of chickens that couldn't seem to get their gender right. "What do you mean, hens are female?" The chickens were all staring at Pam as if she had said the world was square. "Yeah, chickens are females." Pam managed to push the bird off her body and sit up. Didn't you ever see Cow and Chicken? Chicken was her brother. This little known fact was passed on by one of the hens squawking around at Pam's feet. Pam was coming up with 0. Why are you guys haunting Mr. Glumpus's house? He has the treasure. Several chickens all began to crow and pluck about. The word treasure came up several times. Pam got to her feet, but found conversing a bit hard, seeing as the average height of a chicken is 12 inches. As she got down on her elbows and knees and placed her head as close to the chickens as she could. What treasure, and where is it located? It's hidden in the basement. More clucking and scratching about the street for ghost worms. Show me where this so-called treasure is hidden. Pam gave them her best skeptical look. Why should we show you our treasure? The head hen gave Pam a look that said, I don't trust you. Show me your treasure and I'll see to it that it's removed and placed in a better location. Pam got to her feet. There were several cars sitting, waiting for her to vacate the middle of the street, and no one had bothered to honk, thinking Pam might be dangerous. Nobody could see the ghost birds but her. Pam walked back to Guy Galumpus's house. As she looked back and was glad to see the chickens were all following her. Pam walked up the sidewalk, paused to try scrubbing the poo from her shoe. When this showed to be a futile endeavor, Pam pulled her shoe off and left it on the grass. The door was still open. Guy was standing in the hallway looking at Pam. Did you find anything? I think so. Can I go down into your basement? Sure, I guess. He led Pam to the door to the basement. Can I ask why? I need to check something out and then I'll fill you in. Pam tromped down the stairs, making a clomp thump, as one bare foot landed on the stairs. The chickens came flocking down around her, clucking and cooing as they crowded around her feet. There in the corner, one of the chickens held out one wing. The floor was dirt, just like the bag office. Pam strode to the suggested corner, wishing she had a shovel of some kind. The chickens all began to scratch at the ground. Pam got down on her hands and began to dig. With just her fingers. She got down on her knees, began to dig with just her fingers. She dug down about a foot when her fingers found something buried in the dirt. It felt like a metal box. Pam pulled the box from the hole as the hens all scurried about, raising a violent uproar. She sat back on the floor, worked the locking mechanism. The lid was ready to reveal its secrets. Pam slowly pulled the lid open. There, nested in the bottom of this small steel box, sat a dozen ceramic eggs. Pam just stared at the treasure. The chickens all went wild. She has freed our treasure! There was a lot of crowing and skittering about. Pam showed the so-called treasure to Guy Galumpus. Ceramic eggs? What are those for? I have no idea, but this is what's causing the poltergeist to haunt your home. Pam would have to look this up to see what ceramic eggs were used for. Maybe some kind of witchcraft. What can you do about them? Do I need to have a special ritual performed on my house? I think maybe I just need to remove them and the ghost should go along with the eggs. Pam hoped she was right. Take them, they're yours. A guy wanted to be done with this episode of his life. Pam gave Mr. Galumpus his bill and then took the eggs out to her car. All the ghost hens came running and clomb into her vehicle. They clucked and preened all the way to the BAG Company. There was some ghost poop left on the back seat. First, Pam went to the library to find out why anyone would want ceramic eggs. She, of course, grabbed a cup of joe while she was there. The ghost chickens all gathered round, dropping ghost chicken poop on everything. Mr. Techno, why would anybody use ceramic chicken eggs? She showed the steel box to Eddie. Oh, nest eggs, also called nesting eggs. You place them where you want your chickens to roost. That way you don't have chicken eggs all over your yard. Are they worth much? Pam looked at the ghost chickens scrambling about the library. No one had any idea the birds were there, but Madame Dingus kept looking around as if she heard something but didn't know what it was. They're about $1 apiece from Amazon.com. He sniffed the air and as if smelling something foul. Come on, girls, let's put these out back. Pam began to lead the chickens out the backyard. Eddie looked at Pam, figuring she was doing something beyond his abilities. The yard goat watched Pam as she led the hens across the side and out the building. This was where the company car was stored for when any member of the BAG needed a ride. The company car was a 1980 Cadillac station wagon, also known as a hearse. The engine had been souped up to a dangerous point. Pam found a place in the tall grass and placed the eggs on the ground so the ghost chickens would have easy access. There, now the treasure is yours. There was a riot of feathers as the birds all ran hither and yon, claiming this part of the yard as theirs. Great, and now I have ghost chickens to go along with the ghost people in the attic. Pam went inside to see what else she needed to attend to. Sitting in her office, Pam had opened the windows to get a nice breeze through and help air the place out. For unknown reasons, the building was almost always about 75 degrees. Cassandra said it was like one giant cold spot spread throughout the building. Pam was halfway through a book called Monsters of Texas by Ken Gerhart and Nick Redfern when Hilda knocked at the door. She whispered, "There's someone on the phone that claims to be your mother." "Why are you whispering?" Pam looked at Hilda. "I don't know if she's your mom or not. What if she's just some crazy woman who thinks she's your mother?" Hilda looked over her shoulder as if the phone might be listening in on their conversation. Pam followed Hilda back to the only working phone in the entire building. When Hilda took a seat behind the desk, Pam gave her a look. "What are you doing working the front desk?" Hildy had to step out. Hilda got busy shuffling papers around, trying to look like a receptionist. Pam lifted the handset to her ear. "Yes, hello?" "Pam, dear, this is your mom. Do you remember your Aunt Donna?" She's not the one trying to get into outer space by using a giant slingshot, is she?" "No, dear, that's your Aunt Felicity. Donna is the one looking for Bigfoot." Paula had 6 sisters, each with their own unique characteristics. Family reunions were sometimes a bit exciting. Someone usually either went to the hospital or jail. "Oh, yes. How's she getting on with the search?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. You know how you can see things that, well, the rest of us can't? Well, I was talking to your Aunt Catherine about how things were going on around here, and she told me that your Aunt Sylvia had heard that your Aunt Donna was in need of some help tracking down some colleagues of hers." Donna's the one looking for Bigfoot?" Pam had met most of her aunts at one time or another, but sometimes had difficulty putting faces to names. Donna must be the one she hadn't met yet. "Yes, just a little ways down the road, in my hometown. In Texas, this amounts to anywhere around 200 miles. They went out into the woods just north of Tyler and were supposed to be back by Sunday night." "Isn't this the kind of thing you call the law about?" Pam wasn't trying to dodge the request, as she just didn't want to be the one to stumble on a meth lab in the middle of nowhere or become another chapter in Missing 411. "Well, normally yes, but you see, your aunt, her and the law don't exactly see eye to eye." Paula sounded as if she took a quick look over each shoulder. "There's some bad blood involved there." Um, would this be work related or should I call in and see about taking a few days off? I already got your father to call Ray and get him to send you as an official representative of the company. But don't say anything to Donna about money. If she offers you cash, take it, but no checks. Paula thought about any other instructions that might be a good idea when dealing with her younger sister. You leave tomorrow, so try to be home at a decent time. Sometime during the conversation, Hilda had gotten up and left. Hildy came trotting down the stairs and took her seat. She gave Pam a look like, "You're tying up the phone." Pam and Paula said the bunch of things that moms and daughters said when speaking on the phone and then hung up. Hildy already had her feet propped up on the desk and had a magazine covering her face. Pam slipped around the corner to confer with her mentor. Pam knocked at Cassandra's door and then slipped in. Cassandra was in her usual happy disposition. "What brings you sneaking around like this?" "Did I look like I was sneaking?" Pam had glanced out the door as she was shutting it. "Anyway, I'm going out of town tomorrow, and I was wondering if you could keep an eye on the Nesmoresticus sisters, or sister?" Cassandra whispered this last. "In a word, yes. I just don't know if I screwed up by hiring Hildy or not." Pam considered the last few months. "I guess I hired Hilda, too." "Don't fret, hon. Susie was off a rocker, but look at all the work she got done." Cassandra hardly ever saw the bad in anyone. Pam was looking forward to getting out of town for a change, and this would be a nice ending to her summer vacation from school. So far, she'd spent her entire summer vacation running around town doing work for her uncle. Her bank account was very healthy, and soon she could afford a new used car, but Pam wanted to relax and enjoy the last of her time away from the school. Pam was on her way back to her office. As she passed Hildy's desk, the receptionist got her attention. "That lady would like to see you." The way she said the word lady was more of a question than a description. Pam looked in the direction of the accusing finger. There sat a very tall woman. She must have been over 6 feet. She was dressed as if coming from a Halloween party. Her hair was long and black, so black it looked nearly blue. Her eyes, looked out from under her bangs, were nearly colorless. Her skin was pale as if no blood flowed through her body. She wore a black, floor-length dress with a satin cloak over her shoulders. There was a huge black bag sitting at her feet. Pam addressed the woman. You wanted to see me?" Pam was hoping to slip out the door early today so she could see her mom and pack for her trip tomorrow. The lady in question stood up, and up, and up. She wasn't just over 6 feet. She was just under 7. "I found your ad in the papers this morning. I thought it might be nice to come see what kind of a business dealings you were involved in." Pam felt as if Hildy were looking over her shoulder, which she was. She had pulled herself up onto the desktop and was right behind Pam, looking over one shoulder, and then the other. "I think she's a dude," Hildy whispered in Pam's ear. The very tall woman gave Hildy a look intent to kill small reptiles and maybe a big one or two. "Perhaps we could adjourn to some place less crowded by your underlings." Yes, good idea. Maybe my office." Pam led the very much oversized woman to her office. Sorry about that. I just hired her, and she's still learning the job." Pam took her seat across from this woman she didn't know yet. "Have you filled out an application yet?" No, that trollop at the front desk was too busy with the derogatory remarks and looks. Pam got down to business. Pulling an application from her drawer, she noticed it was already partially filled in. Pam looked in her drawer and then the next one. "Let's get started then." Pam tried to erase the information already on the form. Your name? Hortense Medusa. The woman sat in the visitor's chair as if it were made for a kindergartner. She crossed one leg over the other, showing she had on slippers, as opposed to, say, 12-inch high heels to give her such elevation. And your specialty? Pam thought she was just asking Hortense to fill out the application, but she didn't want to hand her an already filled in form, and it gave Pam something to do to earn her keep. I do scrying, crystal ball gazing, and card reading. Hortense reached into her bag and extracted what looked like a snow globe. Setting it on Pam's desk, Hortense gazed into the glass sphere. I see you're going out of town tomorrow. Some kind of a search for an elusive being. She looked at Pam. Be careful where you park. Pam watched as the white speckles settled on top of the globe. Okay, I'll do that. You have a charming place here. I can feel the energy flowing around me. I would very much like to become a part of your facility. Pam hadn't so much hired this woman as the woman had joined the company. The staff here at the BAG didn't actually work for her uncle, as they worked in the building. They were free to come and go as they pleased. Their hours were written down in a notebook, and as people used their services, their income was tracked. The BAG subtracted income tax as a means of keeping the less organized, which was just about all of them, from going to jail. Locked up staff couldn't get much work done. Just like Susie. I look forward to working with your people here. Well, except that cretin at the front desk. There's something odd about her, as if she's not a real person. This gave Pam way too much inspiration to believe Hilda and Hildy were one and the same. Come with me and I'll show you around. You like coffee? Eddie nearly dropped a stack of cups when Hortense walked into the coffee shop. Madame Dingus just sat there staring. Wanda stayed in her usual position. Wanda Murkowski was one of the staff. Her specialty was deep thought. She could find answers to questions when others weren't too sure what the question was. One day, about 6 years ago, give or take a few months, Wanda sat down at the counter to contemplate some intrigue and was having a difficult time reasoning out the solution. She hadn't moved in the whole time. If only some other staff member had bothered to write down the question of her quest, they might at least know what she was working on. And no one had, and so they didn't. Sarah did the unthinkable. Wow, you're tall. How's the weather up there? Pam was about to turn and run for the door. About the same as down there, except I can see farther. Hortense smiled down at the tween. Eddie was still staring. What do you take in your coffee? 2 spoons of honey and a shot of peppermint. She stooped down onto the stool that Pam would have clomb up on. I see you have a few books. Pam took a quick look at her watch. It was quickly moving from leaving early to leaving at the end of the day, which for Pam was still early. Her average work week was about 70 hours, give or take 10. Paula, a.k.a. Mom, was worried that Pam was turning into a workaholic. Having a house full of people was not a motivator to return early. The Haverstraws were a nice family, but 6 kids were 5 too many for Pam's liking. All in all, there were 16 people still trying to live in the bogus household. Those 2 living in the garage were just a bit odd by Pam's standards. After absorbing the atmosphere and coffee, Pam got on with the tour. She had a suspicious feeling she'd already done this once today. One benefit of working at the BAG office was Pam had no need to go to a gym to get in shape. The stair workout was doing wonders for her legs. Pam stopped in front of room 2D. The door was partway open. Mrs. Clark insisted on leaving the door like this because the scientists were nearly always in a hostile mood towards each other. She figured this would allow some of the negativity to escape from their quarters instead of being absorbed by Garrett. Pam pushed the door open. Garrett was sitting in a corner as if being punished for some offense that had yet to be revealed. "It's a star," he announced to the wall in front of him. A blindfold was wrapped around his face. Mrs. Clark was sitting at the table, her book open next to her coffee cup. Dr. Minska Bobby was standing on the opposite corner, wearing a blindfold. He yelled over his shoulder, "He says it's a star!" Mumble, 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 mumble came from the other side of the wall. "No, a star, not a steer." Minka Sababi pointed his fist at the wall and shook it at whoever was on the other side. "This child is very good, but he's receiving too much negative energy to be effective," Hortense told Pam. Garrett heard a voice he didn't recognize, lifted his blindfold, and stared at Hortense. "Holy cow, it's a giant!" Mumble, 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 mumble came through the wall. Minka Sababi yelled, "No, it's not a flying ant. He said it's a giant." The doctor looked at Hortense, then cringed. He would have fled if not for being trapped in the corner of the room. Mumble, 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 mumble. Minka Sababi tried to answer without losing sight of what he perceived as an impending threat to his very life. "I know there's no such card. There's a really tall woman in here." He tried to smile at Hortense. He looked more frightened than before. Hortense had given a huge smile to Garrett, but gave the doctor her death ray look. This caused Dr. Minka Sababi to quickly begin checking his notes attached to his clipboard, anything to keep from staring at the giant. Pam's curiosity got the better of her, so she strolled down the hall to room 2E. Opening the door, she found Dr. Rendon and Mansfield. Dr. Rendon was standing against the wall in the opposite corner, and Dr. Dr. Mansfield was in the far corner holding the Zener cards in his hand. He asked, "What's this nonsense about a giant? Holy cow!" This last expletive was a result of Hortense stepping up behind Pam. The top of her head was just above the door jamb. She said, "I see you have a lot of posers running rampant around your beautiful establishment. Yes, they want to study Garrett, see how well he can read the Zener cards." Hortense gave Pam a friendly look. "Just don't request that I participate in their tomfoolery." Hortense went back to room 2D. "Madam Clark, if I were you, I'd run these weasels off and focus on other endeavors." Jolene gave this idea consideration. "I've already thought about it, but we cashed their check already." The doctors had gotten a huge grant from the government to study the effects of various matters on the abilities of reading cards. Even though the government considered this a waste of time and money, that never stopped them from doing thusly. That's what governments did. Pam eased Hortense away from the ongoing experiment. On the third floor, Pam knocked at the door to room 3D, where Dolores Della Noche had her office. Hortense was enthralled. A fellow scryer? How wonderful! She looked into each of the hundreds of mirrors. You don't stare into a mirror to do scrying. You look at it at an angle. You try to see what's there but not there. Get it? I simply must have the room next door. 3D had been Mr. Armstrong's office until Demon Bob had blown a hole through the wall as well as through the floor. Pam had gotten the workers to replace the flooring as well as build a new wall with a window. The window didn't look like any of the other windows in the building, but then the bricks were all a different color from the rest of the building as well. Without waiting for an invitation, Hortense walked to the next door, went into what she considered her new office. "This will do me just fine." She looked at the floor. "Why is there a half-finished devil's trap painted on the floor?" That's why the wall was blown out. Pam didn't want to have to tell the entire story of those Nimrods releasing a demon that took over their bodies one at a time and tried to do its nefarious deeds until being driven away by the combined efforts of the entire BAG Company. Go back and read the BAG Company. No problem, I'll just throw a rug over it. Would it be okay if I hung some curtains over those windows? I like it a bit dark when I'm doing my undertakings. Pam took a look at her watch. Well, she'd at least be home before dark. I'll leave you to decorate as you see fit. Just please don't knock too many holes in the wall and try to get along with the receptionist. Pam held out her hand. Welcome to the Bogus Anomalous Group. Hortense had a grip like a vice. Pam was driving out the front yard when she remembered that Sarah was with her. Running back inside, Pam got the tween to come home with her. Pam was preoccupied, wondering if just maybe she should have checked Hortense's driver's license. Once she was home, Pam needed to get her things ready for the big day tomorrow. First things first. Mrs. Bellum, can I go into my room, which right now is y'all's room, so I can get my things? You don't really have to ask. After all, it's your bedroom. Go ahead. Miss Bellum was in the kitchen with Paula, seeing about making dinner. Pam was glad to see there would be no beans or rice for now. Ever since her folks had decided to get out of debt and stop spending money they didn't have, Pam had eaten a lot of beans and rice, or rice and beans, depending on which day of the week it was. She figured her folks must have a few $1,000,000 in their bank account by now, as she would have been shocked by the truth. Entering her room, Pam found Sandy was busy texting her friends. Even though they were the same age and had some of the same classes, they hardly ever spoke. Sandy thought Pam was nuts for working away her entire summer vacation. Pam thought Sandy should try helping her mom out by becoming gainfully employed. Sarah thought she was going to help pack. The room was filled with cases and boxes of clothes that belonged to the three occupants. Just about all of Pam's things had been shoved into the closet. She made the mistake of opening the door. A cascade of possessions came flowing from the chamber beyond the ingress. Pam found her legs trapped in an avalanche of personal items. Oops, I guess my mom was in a hurry. Paula had allowed the Bellum family to use Pam's room for the duration of the storm. Now they were trying to find an apartment to live in while their home was being rebuilt. It was Pam's good fortune that Sharma had given her a hand cleaning the entire house just before things went to pieces. Sandy looked up from her cell phone and then went back to texting. Pam reached into the closet and tried to pull her book bag from the morass. Once the bag was in hand, Pam got busy stuffing things she figured she might need while looking for the guys who were looking for Bigfoot and were now missing. Never having been in the woods for more than a few hours at a time, Pam packed as if going on a trip to her aunt's house, which was where she thought she was going. She dug down to the bottom of the closet, pushing pants and shirts and sweaters and shoes and unmentionables and unidentifiables out into the middle of the floor as she looked for her hiking boots. Once she had burrowed into the center of the pile, she remembered that her hiking boots were in the back seat of her car. Grabbing a few pairs of socks and thingies, Pam stuffed everything into her book bag. Sarah pulled a crumpled boonie hat from the pile. You should take this, it might save your life. The look of credulity got her to continue. It will save you from getting sunburn. The pile was monumental. Pam started carefully putting things back into the closet, but that only lasted a few minutes. Soon she was stuffing things in any way manageable. Now the door won't close. Shoot, where did all this stuff come from? The mall, and yes, you bought it all. What was I thinking? I don't think you were thinking at the time. Oh, gee, thanks. Why don't you just say bad things about my. Pam looked over her shoulder at Sandy. Sandy was looking at Pam as if she, Pam, that is, had lost her mind. Did I say that out loud? Pam had just reinforced Sandy's already strained ideas about the owner of the room she was currently inhabiting. It helped not a bit that Sarah considered Pam to be the most wonderful person on earth. Sandy thought her younger sister was a lot off upstairs. That story about fighting a demon in a non existent gravel pit on the south side of town was just one more brick in Sandy's already high wall. Sarah tried to help shove the door shut. Just don't stand too close when you open it. A sage advice from someone so young. The dinner conversation circled around the unavailability of apartments in this small city or big town. The older folks got to sit at the table while the younger ones were mandated to sit around the perimeter balancing plates on their knees. It was a hard set fast rule of Paula's. A dinner was to be attended by everyone, and she seldom bent her rules. Of course, Pam's bizarre work schedule had done a lot more than bend them. Pam had wound up with Sarah sitting in the window seat. The yard was still just a sea of mud. The wolf skins were drying, draped over the solar dryer. Paula was the only person in the neighborhood to have a solar dryer. It wasn't because she didn't own an electric clothes dryer, but during their first few months of gazelle intensity, saving and paying off debt, Paula had decided to save a few bucks by drying their clothes outside. Now Paula was hard pressed to use her machine when there was so much free sunshine. Live like no one else, so someday we can live like no one else. One of the many Dave sayings being bandied about the house. So, Sarah started the conversation. Pam was dreading. Do you think I might be able to use the kitchen floor while you're away? Pam was so relieved she nearly jumped to her feet to do a victory dance. Yes, as long as your mom says yes. Pam had been dreading Sarah asking to go along on this Bigfoot hunt. Pam liked the kid, but didn't want the responsibility of dragging her through the woods. It had been bad enough taking her along while battling the demon Waldo in the gravel pit. Bring me back something as a souvenir. Sarah was growing closer to Pam than to her own sister. Chapter 4 Road Trip. Pam was not an early riser. Her concept of getting up in a timely manner was sometime around noon. So far, she'd been able to sleep past 10 all of 5 times. Sarah was hovering over her like a politician looking for a bribe. You awake yet? Pam looked at the ceiling above her. No, I'm still asleep. I'm dreaming there's a very young vampire trying to drink my blood. Sarah was not to be put off. I put something in your bag you might need in the jungle. Good, thanks. Pam wasn't quite sure what Sarah had told her. She reached up and grabbed the stove handle, and then she remembered what had happened last time. Rolling over, Pam got her knees under her and stood up, right under the chair she had placed there last night. Pam got busy brushing and combing, and Sarah was right there, filling Pam in on all the things that had happened at the library while she was diligently helping Eddie get the books back into their places. I found a book on magic spells. There are 2 copies of. I found a check. Did you know there's a bat? Sarah had a plethora of energy so early in the morning. Paula made breakfast for the crowd, and some folks had skipped breakfast in favor of more sleep. But we shouldn't talk about Sandy when she's not there to defend herself. Others had headed out the door at first light en route to vastly more important things than nourishing their bodies. Then it was time for Pam to hit the road. Her mother said all the things mothers say anytime one of their kids, well, their kid, needs to leave home, even if only for 2 or 3 days. Sarah gave Pam a hug. Miss Bellum said things to hopefully encourage a healthy trip, and then Pam was driving away, heading on a new adventure. The GPS said to turn right here and then left there, and soon Pam was on the highway heading in the general direction of Tyler, Texas. She only had a 3 hour trip, so she was able to relax and enjoy the drive. She was so pleased her radio worked. The last trip to San Antonio was somewhat skewed by the same song playing over and over and over, thanks to some bizarre instrument of the devil called the 8-track tape player. Paula had shoved a paper bag full of goodies for the road trip into Pam's hands as she was heading out the door. Cookies and a piece of cake and a sandwich not made by Eddie. There was a jug filled with iced tea and a bottle of water. They didn't drink bottled water, but Paula had filled a few bottles from the sink. Pam was beginning to think of herself as being cheap. Paula called it being frugal. The GPS said to turn off the main highway, and then after a few minutes it said to turn off of Farm to Market Road, better known as FM. The FM ran for a few miles through enormous pine trees. They grew close to the sides of the road, making a canopy in some places. When the GPS said turn left right now, Pam turned onto a dirt road. The dirt road looked like something out of an old movie Pam had seen on TV one afternoon when nothing else was on worth watching. Something with banjo music. It was called Delivery or Deliverable, or was it Delivering? Anyway, it was weird. Something about Squeal Like a Pig. Pam couldn't sleep for weeks after watching it. Her Aunt Donna lived out in the piney woods, something to do with escaping the grid, whatever the grid was. Having rained recently, the dirt road was more than dirt. Okay, it was a mud road. Pam thought it was a bad idea to continue, but once she started down this slippery morass, there was no turning around. She just had to give it the gas and pray she didn't get stuck. At the end of the mud road, that was actually a driveway, Pam came to an old wood frame house with a dozen cars parked in any spot not occupied by a tree. Most had parts missing, and some were little more than a frame. As soon as Pam's car was within view of the house, the front door opened and someone stepped out on the porch with a shotgun. Pam was about to throw her car into reverse and run for her life when she recognized her aunt. Her aunt looked a lot like her mother if her mother were a survivalist living in a cabin in the woods instead of a mother living in a house in town. A pack of wild man-eating dogs came bounding out of the brush, each one intent on being the first one to bite this intruder. They all barked and snarled at the door of the car. They really didn't like the fact that it has different colored doors and fenders. It took Donna a second or two before she recognized the offspring of her sister. "You must be Paula's kid. Welcome to nowhere." She set the shotgun down by the door. Once Pam knew she wasn't about to join her friends on the other side, she relaxed and stepped out the door of her car. The doors finally matched the rest of the car. Everything was mud brown. The dogs took turns sniffing her and convincing themselves she wasn't a threat or a snack. A few of them rinsed the tires off. Pam and Donna did the whole "My, you've grown," and "Did we meet before?" and "Mom says hi," and "I don't think we ever met," and they got down to business. "So you're looking for a few of your fellow Bigfooters?" Pam asked, getting as much info as she could so she could try to work her magic, if she had any to work. Who told you that? I could care less about these bunion heads. No, I want to find the big hairy guy, not those losers." Donna looked less like her sister as she spoke. "Oh, so we're not looking for people?" "Yes, we are. Bigfoot is people, just a big hairier and less abundant." Donna pointed a finger at her Jeep. It was a real live Willie's Jeep. Though the faded green paint, Pam could see a white star in the center of the hood. Put your gear in the back so we can get going." Pam was surprised. "Oh, I didn't know we were heading straight out." Pam wondered how she might get out of this one. "And not staying here. We're heading about 75 miles north of here." Donna walked to the porch and grabbed the shotgun. She shoved it in under some of the gear already stowed in the Jeep. "Daylight's wasting. Hustle your butt or you'll have to walk." Pam quickly grabbed her book bag and stashed it in on top of something unknown inside the Jeep. After jumping in, she jumped back out and grabbed her overnight kit that she had now kept in her car for future snowstorms. Just before Donna could get the Jeep in gear, Pam jumped out and dug her hiking boots from under the clothes scattered in the back seat. "Are you done yet, or should I just take a nap while you get your acting gear?" Donna was raring to go. "Okay, I got everything, I think. I hope." Pam tried to think of what she was missing. "If you don't have it, you'll figure it out sometime soon." Donna threw the Jeep in gear and gunned it down the dirt road. Pam was convinced her aunt was trying to kill her, if not them both. The Jeep could have gone faster if not for the excessive amount of time it spent not touching the road. Even with the seatbelt snugged as tight as possible, Pam found contact with the seat sometimes less than admirable. "What's the rush?" she shouted at the top of her lungs. Her aunt didn't hear the question. It could have been due to the wind whipping by them on either side of the open-top Jeep. It might have something to do with the music blasting from the dash-mounted CD player. A dash-mounted isn't quite right. A dash duct-taped is more accurate. Pam had tried to focus on the device by the bouncing, but the bouncing made visibility impossible. The speakers were somewhere under the seats. Some kind of electric guitar torturing was going on. They came to a grinding halt. Pam had just enough time to say, "Are we there?" Then her aunt took off down another dirt road. This one made her driveway look like the yellow brick road. Mud splashed in the air. Little managed to get inside the Jeep because they drove away faster than the mud could land. The road came to an abrupt halt. The Jeep came to the same abrupt halt. Pam opened her eyes to see if they were dead yet. "We'll leave the Jeep here. Grab your stuff. We have a hike ahead of us." Donna got out and then pulled a big backpack from the rear area. Pam stepped from the Jeep and slid to the ground. Her body felt as if she were still jiggling and bouncing around. When the sensation of movement finally settled down enough, Pam got her book bag out and thought she just might be less prepared for this trek than her aunt. "Here, you carry this." Donna hefted a big bag from the rear of the Jeep and tossed it across to Pam. Pam caught the bag and promptly crashed to the ground. "Come on, no time to dawdle. We still have a ways to go before sundown." Donna began to march, a very quick march through the dense wooded land. Pam checked her watch. It was 4:30. Sundown was still 3 hours away. "We're going to hike for 3 hours?" "Yes, and it's a 4-hour hike," Donna called from down the trail somewhere. Scrambling to her feet, Pam got her book bag back in place. She lifted the canvas bag up over her shoulder. It was more cumbersome than heavy. "This is not what I had planned for the rest of my summer vacation." She tried to run to catch up with her aunt. The air was hot and humid. It didn't take long for Pam's clothes to become saturated with sweat. After wading through a few streams, Pam thought she'd been better off leaving her flats on in place of her hiking boots, which were now filled with muddy water. Each step made a squishing sound as if she were walking across a wet mattress. The legs of her jeans were soaked with mud and water. Her t-shirt was dripping with icky sweat. Pam watched as sweat dripped from the brim of her boonie hat. The trail was a combination of ankle-twisting rocks and slippery mud. If Pam watched her footing, she would get smacked in the face by branches. If Pam watched where she was going, her feet managed to find the deepest mud holes to sink into. Donna was having as little difficulty as Pam was managing to find. Pam was able to keep up with her aunt, only due to all the stair climbing she had done over the last 2 months. But stair climbing only works the lower half of the body. Pam's shoulder was killing her as she moved the canvas bag to the other shoulder. This worked out for the next few miles, but soon this side was demanding relief as well. How much further do we have to go? Pam was on her fifth shoulder transfer. Almost there, just on that hill. Donna pointed to a thick cluster of trees surrounded by other trees that were indistinguishable from the trees on either side of them. Everything looked exactly the same to Pam. Pam was so focused on staying upright she had no idea where they were or how they got out to where she was or how she was going to get back home if she had to. Donna stopped her death march and set her backpack on the ground. Pam simply stopped moving and fell to her face. The canvas bag helped keep her from moving. No time for a nap. We have to set up camp before it gets dark. Donna got busy piling wood next to the ring of stones. By the looks of the campsite, she'd been using it for a while. Set up the tent on that bare spot. It's relatively smooth. Relatively as in your weird relative with too many cats and not enough changes of clothing. Pam discovered the canvas bag she'd been strapped with contained a tent, as well as other camping essentials. Unzipping the bag, she got busy setting up the tent. Setting it up as in dragging the parts around and trying to figure out what went where. The last camping trip Pam had been on, along with her family, consisted of pulling into an RV site, plugging in the shoreline, and that was it. What's this thing supposed to be? She held up a long, thin piece of tubing. Donna had disappeared. That's okay. I'll figure things out on my own. Pam dug the nylon around the campsite until it looked like a pile of nylon. She then tried to flatten it out. Kneeling in the middle of the pile, Pam unwadded everything and then tried to push the tubing through what looked like a right hole. It didn't fit. Next, she got all the parts that looked like they were the same color and then threw it up in the air, in hopes it would somehow miraculously turn into a tent-shaped object. Donna was still nowhere to be seen. Whisper, 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 went something in the woods. Could you tell me what's going where? Pam asked in the direction she thought Donna had walked. What was that? I can't make out what you're telling me. Pam walked into the dense foliage to try to get a better grasp of what was being whispered. It only took a few steps to lose sight of the campsite. Pam guessed she could just retrace her steps and they would bring her back to the tent. Turning around, she walked just a few steps, only to find no tent. Oh, this is just stupid. Walking around in what should be a circle, Pam found a nice deep ravine filled with dead trees. I don't remember this being here. She backtracked to where she thought she had come from. It was getting dark. Pam now had tried walking in the opposite direction she thought she should go. This was deduced from the fact that Pam was unsure of what to do, but guessed her best guess was the exact opposite of what she should do. It got darker. Oh, come on, and where are the voices I should be hearing from? Don't ask us. We're more frightened than you are. Well, you guys are as much help as a balloon in a hurricane. Pam tried reassuring herself and trying to find her way back to camp. I definitely passed that tree on the way here. Pam was getting further lost than seemed possible. It got pitch black. If you've never been in the deep woods after sundown, you haven't had such a sensation of darkness. It gets really dark really fast. Pam wanted to scream. Then she thought if she yelled loudly enough, her aunt would hear her and come to her rescue. Pam turned in a circle, intent on guessing in which direction she should yell. A glow caught her eye. Something bright on the edge of all this darkness. It flickered like a campfire. Her dad had built one during their less scary camping trip. The glow was just discernible through the underbrush. With few options that would lead to Pam living to see tomorrow, she began to walk towards the flickering light. How on earth did I get so far away from camp in such a short time? Pam continued pushing through the scrub and the tanglefoot. Stumbling and staggering, she stepped out into their campsite. Donna was sitting by the fire, setting a little cooking stove to make dinner. You did real good job on the tent. Pam saw the tent was set up as if by a troop of Boy Scouts. The flaps were open to allow a bit of a breeze to cool the inside, and a trench had been dug around the base to channel away any rain that might come their way. I didn't. Did you just say that? Pam looked at Donna to try to discern if she was being factitious or not. Donna just kept working on dinner. With that, I'm going to break right here. It's been an hour. If you've enjoyed the show so far, tune in for the next exciting episode of the BAG Go Squatching. Till next time, this is Chris James.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.